Now, we tend to think that a lot of the innovation is happening just in the private sector. But I got to launch Capital Bike Share in DC, Divvy in Chicago, two of the largest systems in the United States. And I can tell you that without government leading, without government making the capital investment in the system, it wouldn't have happened. And we would not have big bike share systems in the United States. Now, we do have the private sector running them, but government plays a very important role sometimes in decision making with public input or with actually making it the capital investment that the private sector would not take the risk for. And if the public-private partnership is done properly and embraced by both sides, and this is a lot of what I talk about in the book, shared incentives, shared rewards, it's amazing how well these can work. But when you get into a contractual war over who's going to win and who's going to lose, the citizenry typically loses.
Questions. Then, in your book, you talk about public-private partnership. Mm-hmm. And having been on both sides of the camp, you've been to the private sector, been to the public sector. Now, lots of criticisms has been raised about PPP, and one of them is the fallacy that the private sector can manage risk better, and that and the other criticism is, in fact, in private sector, the cost of capital is much higher than public sector. So, in your experience so far, in all the work you have done, how do you mitigate that, and how do you promote PPP, especially in emerging markets here, Singapore and also in Asia?
So I have a much broader view of what a public-private partnership is. Like, I fundamentally think it's about a relationship, and then you figure out contractually how much risk you want to maintain in the public side and how much you want to transfer to the private side. But our bike share systems were public-private partnerships, even though we capitalized them. And I think where we get into trouble sometimes is wanting to offload our assets to the private sector, let them own the public asset, like Chicago did with the parking meters, before I got there, by the way. And they basically sold them to Morgan Stanley for $1.2 billion for 75 years. And then Morgan Stanley made all the money back in 6 years and had control of the asset for the next 69 years. So we couldn't do anything interesting with our public space unless we really put our thinking cap on. And so I think people look at that, some of the toll road deals that have been done, and they say, ugh, that's not good. But public-private partnership means a lot of different things. And when it's done properly, and I think it's not just about risk, it's about expertise, right? Like, for instance, when you have, I'm not sure who runs your rail system, but there are companies like Serco, there are companies like Keolis, Transdev. So some of them operate systems on every continent. So you get the benefit of experience that we in DC at Metro, where we operate our own system, do not have. And so we continue to make a lot of mistakes. But if Serco ran it, who runs a lot of the rail in London, they run Dubai, they run systems all over the world, I don't think we'd experience some of the same problems. And so what is government fundamentally good at? What are they not good at? And I think I'm more interested in government playing the air traffic controller, playing the travel agent, figuring out how to integrate the mesh of all the different modes in transportation, for instance, and not in negotiating all the contracts and operating the system day to day. I think actually you lose some of the checks and balances.